Okay, this is hopefully going to be in focus for the whole time. Hello, it is Elle. Today I want to talk about world building. Now, I have reviewed a few fantasy books on my channel, and I have watched a ton of fantasy reviews, and one of the things that people look for in fantasy is world building. Rightfully so. You're being introduced to a new world. Some readers want to really be able to visualize it. They want to be able to put themselves into this new space. They want to be like, yes, I totally understand this world. I'm out of focus. I can envision everything that is happening. It is very clear to me what is going on. I'm just going to pull up examples because this came up because I just read The Fellowship of the Ring, and oh, hi, kitty. And I could envision every scene. Tolkien's writing was descriptive in location. I felt like everywhere we went, I got a real sense of the place. I could see the scenery as we were walking. I would consider this to have really good world building. Another fantasy book that I think has great world building, the fifth season, the Broken Earth trilogy. I could really envision the disasters of the world, the scenery we were walking through. It was very evocative. But world building isn't just for fantasy. World building is a thing that I think a good author could do because, in some fantasy, they don't focus on the world, and that is fine. Not all world in fantasy or sci-fi, I guess, have to have really great world building. I personally prefer it so that I can really envision the scenery, but it's not required. World building should not just be a focus or a priority for sci-fi and fantasy. I think all fiction can have great world building because we read fiction for a variety of reasons, but one reason I read fiction is to go to a place I haven't been to before. So I have read books from across the world, and in my reading I have traveled the world. But sometimes I can envision it, and sometimes I can't. I think that the place that this shows up is most obviously well done for me is places I've already been to. So an example I'm going to use is the Bay Area. I grew up in the Bay Area. I spent the first 18 years of my life there. I am very well accustomed to what the scenery of the Bay Area is like. One place that does it really well is There by Tommy Orange. I felt like Oakland was a living, breathing place in this book. I feel that if you read this book and you had never been there, you can get a sense of what Oakland is like. It was one of the reasons I love the book for a lot of the reasons, but it was one of the reasons I really liked this book. On the other hand, I read When Dimple Met Rishi, which takes place in San Francisco. And one of the reasons I hated that book so much was because I don't think the author spent more than 2 weeks in San Francisco. It was just it was cliche upon cliche about San Francisco. It was always foggy, which it is not always foggy. It was we were constantly describing the fog. It was foggy no matter what type of time of day we were talking about, which isn't really what it's like there, especially during the months that were being described in the book. And that was just frustrating to me. So her lack of good world building negatively impacted my experience of a book. When an author is pulling you into their world or pulling you into their story, one of the elements of the story is the world, whether it's a real world, whether it's a place you've never been to before, whether it's a place the author never been to before, whether it's a place they had to make up in their mind. We read for a sense of people, time, and place, and we need sometimes our people built up more, we need sometimes the time built up more, and we need sometimes the place to be built up. And that time and place element is so key to world building. And I have some examples. So I talked about There, but an example for me is Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. I have been to England, but I've never been to Victorian England. I've never been to the slums of Victorian England. I don't really know what people wore in that time. I don't have a sense of that in my mind. But then when I'm reading this book, and I guess also because this took place in Victorian England, The Fair Fight by Anna Freeman, I had such a sense of place that it felt like I traveled to Victorian England. I think it's such an integral part of my reading experience, and I'm interested to see if people agree with me, if this is something you've even thought about, and why you might want world building in your fantasy, but you might not need it somewhere else. I'm going to give an example of a book that I liked that I don't really think had good world building. So, see, like, I'm just going to go through some examples. Normal People by Sally Rooney. I know it took place in Ireland. It really just felt like any old university to me, and some like people who lived in a rural place. There wasn't anything that gave me like a strict sense of where I was. I could have popped this into the United States and have gotten the same experience. The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, a romance. I can't tell you where this took place because, again, I could have just inserted any city into it and I would have felt like it could have happened there. Conversely, Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng definitely took place in Shaker Heights, Ohio. It was a suburb. I grew up in a suburb. I can envision a suburb, but it was not like the suburbs I grew up in, and it was very distinctly this specific type of suburb. I could envision this suburb. It didn't feel like you could just pick and place it somewhere else. Rebecca, again, I could envision Manderley. I could envision why do people always feel like they can look in my apartment? Like, I know it's at eye level, but like you can't just like look in people's apartments. It's weird. Anyway, I could envision Manderley, like how they described the place and how you got down to the sea and the bushes outside and the rooms. That is world building. I think you can go conversely the wrong way where you literally describe every single thing. I think an example of that for me is, oh shit, what's its name? The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I felt like we walked into a room and he described every single part of the room instead of like drawing my eye to like the visual cues in the room I needed to see. Likewise, these books that I described that I think have a great sense of world building that are not sci-fi or fantasy, they didn't need to describe everything to get the point across to me. They really just had to draw my eye as a reader to the points that were important. And then I was able to fill in the background and create a world in my own head. So this is really all I have for this video. I imagine this is quite short. I kind of just wanted to get on and chat about this because I think world building is important in all fiction. I don't think every single book we read needs to have great world building in it, but I think that for a lot of historic fiction, for a lot of contemporary fiction, to be successful in what it's attempting to do and the place it's attempting to bring you to, for readers who have been there and for readers who haven't and might never go there, world building is an essential part of the reading experience. So that is all I got for this video. I would encourage you to drop your opinions down in the comments below. I would love to hear what you have to say on this topic. That is all I got. So until next time, happy reading.